Welcome to Ultimate Reddit Drama. Before we dive into today's story, we have a humble request. Please consider subscribing to this new channel. Help us hit our first milestone of 1,000 subscribers. Your support will motivate us to keep bringing you more exclusive original cheating wife stories. And now let's get started with today's story. Bradley Kendon had always believed his life was perfect. 25 years of marriage, a loving daughter, and a successful career. There was nothing missing. He had done everything possible to keep Mary Kendon happy. From birthdays to anniversaries, every little detail was taken care of. But over the past few months, everything had started to change. Mary wasn't the same anymore. She had suddenly taken an interest in fitness and a new social circle. The evenings that were once spent with Bradley were now spent with her new friends. Going to the gym, wearing expensive new clothes, always being on her phone. None of this was like before. At first, Bradley thought it was just a phase. Maybe Mary wanted to feel better about herself. But when the change turned into distance, he realized something was wrong. One evening, as Bradley returned home from work, he saw Mary laughing softly on the phone. The moment she saw him enter, she fell silent and placed the phone face down on the table. "Who was that?" Bradley asked, keeping his tone light. "No one, just a friend," Mary replied, unfazed. Bradley didn't say anything, but a feeling of unease settled in. Mary's circle of friends was small, and the people she usually spoke to, Bradley knew them all. Then who was she talking to so intimately? That night, as he lay beside her in bed, Bradley noticed something new. Mary wasn't as close to him anymore. She spent more time on her phone, stayed up late, and left early for the gym. Something wasn't right. The first clue one weekend, Bradley drove to their vacation cabin, a place they had bought years ago for family getaways. But what he saw there shattered his world completely. The door wasn't locked from the inside, and when he stepped in, the air carried a familiar scent. Mary's perfume. On the table, there were 2 cups of tea, still warm, as if someone had just been there. The bed sheets were messy, and the most disturbing thing. A man's watch rested on the couch. Bradley picked it up and examined it. It wasn't his. His heart pounded. Had Mary been here with someone else? Bradley steadied himself and took a picture. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. Now he needed proof. The surveillance begins. Over the next few days, Bradley started watching Mary closely. Who was she texting? Where was she going? And most importantly, who was she with? Then one day, Mary told him she was going out for shopping. Bradley quietly followed her. She drove to an upscale neighborhood and parked her car. A few minutes later, a man walked up to her. Oscar Pitford, 28 years old, confident, charming, and a fitness trainer. Bradley had heard the name before, but this was the first time it meant something personal. He clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was reality. And now, it was time to create a master plan. Bradley Kendon was no longer just suspicious. He had proof. Oscar Pitford wasn't just a gym trainer anymore. Oscar Pitford was the man who had turned Bradley Kendon's 25-year marriage into a lie. But if Oscar was just a part of the game, the real betrayer was Mary Kendon. That night, when Mary Kendon returned home, Bradley said nothing. No questions, no taunts, no anger. Mary noticed that Bradley wasn't speaking to her the way he used to. "How was your day?" Mary Kendon asked while making coffee in the kitchen. "It was good," Bradley Kendon answered casually. Mary Kendon realized that Bradley Kendon was no longer trying to stop her. This change made her uneasy. Over the next few days, Bradley Kendon started making his move. Bradley Kendon wasn't going to confront her directly, but rather play the game his way. The first step was to make Mary Kendon get caught in her own trap. Bradley Kendon began transferring his assets into separate accounts so that if things led to divorce, Mary Kendon would get nothing. Bradley Kendon consulted a lawyer and restructured his finances to ensure Mary Kendon couldn't claim any money. Then, Bradley Kendon made a move that took the game even deeper. One night, while Mary Kendon was asleep, Bradley Kendon quietly took her phone. Password? Too easy. Bradley Kendon had known Mary Kendon for so many years, and he knew all her habits. Bradley Kendon entered the code, and the phone unlocked instantly. What Bradley Kendon saw destroyed any last bit of emotion he had left. There were many messages between Mary Kendon and Oscar Pitford, romantic conversations, secret meetings, and the most shocking of all, a plan that made Bradley Kendon realize something. "You don't have to worry, babe," Oscar Pitford had written. "Bradley Kendon won't suspect a thing. When the time is right, everything will fall into place for us." This wasn't just an affair. This was a setup. Bradley Kendon took screenshots, saved files, and placed the phone back silently. The second step was to push Mary Kendon and Oscar Pitford even deeper into the trap. Bradley Kendon changed his behavior. No questions, no arguments. Bradley Kendon let Mary Kendon believe that he was completely ignoring everything. But this very change started making Mary Kendon restless. "Why have you been so quiet lately?" Mary Kendon asked one day. "Just looking at things from a different perspective," Bradley Kendon replied with a faint smile. Mary Kendon tried to say something but stopped herself. The following week, Bradley Kendon made his biggest move. Bradley Kendon pretended to go on a business trip and made sure Mary Kendon believed that Bradley Kendon was out of town. Bradley Kendon deliberately gave this information to Mary Kendon to see what would happen next. And exactly that night, while Bradley Kendon was on his trip, Bradley Kendon saw Mary Kendon texting Oscar Pitford. "Meet me at the cabin tonight. Bradley Kendon is out of town." This was the moment. Bradley Kendon had already set up secret cameras in the cabin, but now he had to be there himself. In the darkness of the night, as Oscar Pitford arrived at the cabin, Oscar Pitford had no idea what kind of trap he was walking into. The door was unlocked. Oscar Pitford assumed Mary Kendon was inside waiting. But the moment Oscar Pitford took a step forward, the lights turned on. And standing there was Bradley Kendon. Oscar Pitford's face turned pale. "Bradley, what are you doing here?" Bradley Kendon didn't say a word. He slowly tossed a bag onto the floor. Inside the bag, cash. "What is this?" Oscar Pitford asked, his voice unsteady. "Money," Bradley Kendon replied. "If you walk away from my life right now, it's yours." Oscar Pitford hesitated for a moment. Then he let out a nervous laugh. "You really think I'd leave Mary for money?" Bradley Kendon said nothing. Oscar Pitford took a step forward, but then a gunshot, another, and then silence. The cabin was now still, with only Bradley Kendon standing as Oscar Pitford lay motionless on the floor. The next move belonged to the police. Would Bradley Kendon be able to prove it was self-defense? Or was this story about to take an even darker turn? The aftermath. The cabin was silent. Bradley Kendon stood motionless, his eyes fixed on Oscar Pitford's lifeless body. Blood slowly spread across the wooden floor. He loosened his grip on the gun and took a deep breath. This wasn't part of the plan. Bradley had only intended to scare him. But things had spiraled out of control. Now he needed to stay calm. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he moved quickly toward his car. Every step from here had to be calculated. Bradley Kendon put on his gloves and scanned the room. He couldn't leave any evidence behind. He had already covered the cabin's entrance to ensure there were no fingerprints. Then his eyes landed on Oscar Pitford's phone. The screen still displayed the last message from Mary Kendon. "Meet me at the cabin tonight." That was all the proof Bradley needed. He pocketed the phone and stepped outside, erasing any trace of his presence. Oscar's car remained parked outside. It needed to stay that way, to make it look like Oscar had come alone. The return home. That night, when Bradley Kendon returned home, Mary Kendon was completely unaware. "You're back so soon?" she asked, still busy on her phone. "Yeah, the work wrapped up early." Mary barely looked up, nodding absently before returning to her conversation. But the next domino was about to fall. Detective Samuel Reeves enters the game. The next morning, a call came from the police. "Mr. Kendon, we need to ask you a few questions." Detective Samuel Reeves had summoned Bradley to the station. This was the moment Bradley had been waiting for. When Bradley arrived, Detective Reeves was already going through his file. "So, Mr. Kendon, your name appeared in Oscar Pitford's last call records. Did you know him?" Bradley took a deep breath and kept his voice calm. "Yes, Oscar was my wife's trainer." Detective Reeves gave a small smirk. "Trainer, yes. But were you aware that your wife and Oscar Pitford knew each other more intimately?" Bradley let his expression shift into sadness, playing the part perfectly. "I had my suspicions, but I had no proof." "And do you know where Oscar Pitford was last night?" "No." Bradley shook his head. "I was on a business trip." Detective Reeves studied him for a moment, then closed his file. "There's no solid evidence against you yet, but I want you to know, this case isn't over." Bradley nodded and walked out of the station. But he knew. Every move from now on had to be careful. Mary Kendon's turn. When Bradley Kendon returned home, Mary Kendon was panicked. "What is this?" Oscar Pitford asked, his voice trembling. "Money," Bradley Kendon said. "If you walk away from my life right now, it's yours." Oscar Pitford remained silent for a moment. Then he let out a nervous chuckle. "You think I'd leave Mary for money?" Bradley Kendon didn't respond. Oscar Pitford took a step forward, but then a gunshot, another, and then silence. The cabin was now still, with only Bradley Kendon standing and Oscar Pitford lying motionless on the ground. Now the next move belonged to the police. Would Bradley Kendon be able to prove it was self-defense? Or was this story about to take an even darker turn? The revelation. "Why did you go to the police station?" Bradley Kendon looked straight into her eyes. "Oscar is dead." Mary Kendon's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "Yes, and the police are asking why he was at the cabin." Mary Kendon was at a loss for words. "Did you call Oscar?" Bradley Kendon asked. "And no." But Bradley Kendon already had the proof. He pulled out his phone and showed her the message she had sent. "Meet me at the cabin tonight. Bradley is out of town." Mary Kendon's face turned pale. I... This is all a misunderstanding." Bradley Kendon remained expressionless. Now it was time for the final move. Mary Kendon's panic. Mary Kendon's face was ghostly white. The message in Bradley Kendon's hand could become the biggest piece of evidence against her. "Bradley, I really didn't know this would happen. This is just..." She stammered, her words failing her. Bradley Kendon stared at her, emotionless. "Tell me, Mary, why did you invite Oscar Pitford to the cabin?" Mary Kendon was now completely terrified. Her eyes welled up, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of fear. "I thought we were just going to talk." Bradley Kendon let out a cold chuckle. "You think I'm a fool?" Mary Kendon said nothing. Bradley Kendon took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "There's only one way out of this, Mary. You have to go to the police yourself and admit that you called Oscar Pitford." "What?" Mary Kendon's mouth hung open. "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, this evidence goes straight to the police. And if that happens, you won't just be a witness. You'll be a suspect." Mary Kendon started trembling. But you were there too, Bradley." Bradley Kendon looked her straight in the eyes. "There's nothing tying me to the crime. But this could bury you. Now you have two choices. Either try to prove yourself innocent or surrender to the game. Detective Samuel Reeves' final move. The very next day, the police called Bradley Kendon in for another round of questioning. Detective Samuel Reeves looked even more serious this time. "Mr. Kendon, we have received new information from your wife." Bradley Kendon raised an eyebrow. "Really? What did she say?" Detective Reeves leaned back in his chair and said slowly, "Mary told us that she was the one who invited Oscar Pitford to the cabin." Bradley Kendon nodded. "I already told you, Detective. I knew nothing about it. If she did that, it was her decision." Detective Reeves stared at him for a moment. "And you're saying you had no idea about this meeting?" "Absolutely not." Detective Reeves remained silent for a moment before opening a file. "We have a witness." Bradley Kendon's face didn't change. "A witness?" "Yes, a man living near the cabin reported hearing gunshots that night. He said he saw a black car leaving the scene. And coincidentally, you also own a black car, don't you?" Bradley Kendon, completely unfazed, replied, "Do you have a license plate or clear footage?" Detective Reeves fell silent. "I guess not," Bradley said with a faint smirk. Now there was no solid evidence against him. The final move. A week later, the police officially closed the case. Oscar Pitford's death was ruled as self-defense. Mary Kendon was now completely broken. She tried to talk to Bradley Kendon, but he had already erased her from his life. Bradley Kendon filed for divorce and ensured, with the help of his lawyers, that Mary wouldn't get a single cent. Detective Samuel Reeves knew something was off, but he could never prove it. That evening, as Bradley Kendon sat in his office, he looked back at his life one last time. Everything was over. Bradley Kendon was finally free. And this time, he had won a battle that would never be forgotten.